Hello, this is Michael Nash with Nash Consulting.
And this is Ethan Nash.
Okay, enough chit-chat. We're going to get down to business today because we are talking about the conductor behavior style, and we really don't need to spend a lot of time just, hi, how are you? Let's have some fun, et cetera, et cetera. Let's just get to work.
Okay, let's get right down to business.
All right.
Get the fluffy stuff out.
So we're talking about behavior styles, and you know what? We're not going to waste your time because conductors do not like having their time wasted. No. So we're not going to do any, let's talk about why we're doing this, or here's what we've already learned, or blah, blah, blah.
Like, look, if you want to know where we're at, go back and listen to the last 3 episodes. Don't just start here. We don't have time to explain this to you.
Right, and don't whine about it either. Just don't be all like, oh, well, I don't remember. Go back and listen to it. Take some responsibility.
Wow, I think we're giving off the wrong impression about conductors because they sure sound like a bunch of jerks to me.
I love conductors. So conductor is my secondary style, and I suspect it might be your secondary style as well, my son.
Uh-oh, we got a team of conductors out here.
We do.
This sounds like a stupid question.
Probably is, because, go ahead. Skilled managers equals high morale, which equals all that cool stuff that you cannot pay for and you can't punish for.
When you close off that feedback channel, you are not going to be able to hear the truth.
In the first microseconds, your brain can't tell the difference between physical danger and what we call social danger.
I'm pissed off at you.
Me, specifically?
Well, just because you're my boss and all.
Employees tend to get promoted until they reach their level of incompetence. Go forward and don't suck.
All right. Well, let's jump into it. And again, really, folks, we're not going to intro the topic much today. This really is a series that you need to listen to in order. So this is the 4th episode of probably 5. We might fit in a 6th one there if you behave yourselves. But we are going to break down conductors' top 10 wants, needs, and expectations.
And before we do that, let's give this one little bit of big picture. There's 4 behavior styles. And if you are visualizing the behavior style grid, I want to kind of give you sort of a visual for this. Analyzers were in the top left quadrant, which means that they are on the side of the behavior style grid that's processors, right? These are the folks, that's the right to left x-axis. They're processors as exposed to expedients, right? So conductors are right next to them on the top of the box, but they're on the right. So these guys are more expedient. So analyzers, processors, conductors, expedients. Now underneath conductors, we have our promoters. They're also on the expedient side, but they're on the bottom half of the box, which is about responsive, emotionally responsive, as opposed to on the top of the box, which is where the conductors and the analyzers reside, is more controlled, emotionally controlled. So put all that together, conductors are expedient and they are emotionally controlled.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And we'll talk a little bit about how, a conductor might interact with your promoterness, right? It being your primary and secondary, and with my analyzerness,
right?
Being my primary and secondary. But, again, if you can visualize that grid that he painted, I mean, you being a conductor and a promoter, the way you show up emotionally, it's kind of opposites, right? Promoters are on more or less one end of the spectrum, and conductors are on the other. So again, it's a construct here.
Yeah, it's a spectrum.
You're not one or the other, right?
Yeah, and with you, it's the opposite in you, on the other way, right? Your analyzer, your primary is more process-oriented. The conductor part of you is more expedient, so that's a bit of an opposite. Now, the style that we haven't mentioned today are the listeners, who are literally opposite of conductors, right? They're the opposite quadrant, they're the lower left. Conductors and listeners tend to get together. They tend to get into relationships. They're attracted to one another, just like analyzers and promoters tend to be attracted to one another. And I know we've said this before, when trust and respect are high, those differences really tend to click and they work. And when trust and respect are low, they tend to repel.
Right. So let's jump into this.
All right. No more wasting time here.
Conductors will have these organizing principles. This is the way they show up, not necessarily how they feel. but this is the way they show up to others around them. And the first one is results. Conductors are motivated by producing results. And so here's an obvious question for you. What are some of the benefits this person that is motivated by results brings to the workplace?
They get bleep done. They get stuff done. They get bleep done. These guys get things done. They go forward. They tend to move quickly. They get results. And what's really cool about conductors is they often get results in those tricky, difficult situations. If you want something accomplished that seems impossible, that seems really difficult, give it to a conductor. Because one of the words that shows up a lot when you read about conductors is resourceful, and another word is courageous. And you put resourceful and courageous together, you have people out there getting results.
And that's obviously a good thing for a results-oriented workplace, which most workplaces are, more or less. Now, what might be a negative that could come from someone that is really motivated by results?
Let's just move on. We don't need to do the negatives for these guys.
Do we not?
No, we probably should. Yeah, so
it's not negatives; it's just growth opportunities.
You know what? I'm glad you said that, because we're not going to be beating up on anybody here. We all have them, right? We all have these growth opportunities, and for conductors, it's the results thing. If they're not careful, it can get in the way of relationships. It can look to people, and this is not how conductors feel, although we maybe do sometimes feel this way. But in general, if they're not careful, it can look like the results matter more than the person. So for example, let's say you came to me in the morning and said, hey, I'm really sorry, Mike, I didn't get this thing done that I was going to get done today because, this thing happened last night with my car, and then this thing happened with my friend, and I had to go help. And as you're telling me that, I'm going to be thinking, at least for the first couple seconds, what I'm thinking is, you don't have the results. That bothers me for those first couple seconds, because here's the thing with conductors. Anytime you block their forward progress, they get frustrated, and that frustration can kind of show up. And so now it looks to you like I don't really care about the fact that you had this thing going on with your friend and your car. I'm just worried about results. And that can be a relationship problem right there.
Right. Forward progress or blocking of the forward progress is a stress point for conductors.
Yes, and it shows up.
Right. It shows up as, I'm not very happy with you. You've blocked my forward progress. Initially, at least.
Initially, and that's not how I feel, especially if I give myself a couple minutes to work past that. I realize, well, of course I care about what's happening for you. And that other thing, though, got in the way there temporarily. But unfortunately, you saw it, which can be a bit of an intimidation factor.
Mm-hmm. And the other thing I would add here is just that one things that drive conductors crazy, including myself, and I would imagine you as well, is the E word. Excuses. Excuses can drive conductors crazy. And the issue when looking through a conductor's lens here, of course, is what us conductors may call excuses, other people would just call life.
Real things.
That were actual impediments to getting things done.
That's exactly right. I've had to talk with several of my clients who are conductors and help them understand that, what you are labeling as an excuse, which has for you kind of this derogatory implication,
right,
is a real thing. That is a thing. And if you fail to add some empathy there, now, side note, preview, foreshadowing, when we get to listeners, right? If I came to you in the morning and you were a listener and I said, oh man, I'm so sorry I don't have this because of my car and my friend, you'd go like, oh my gosh, how's your friend? How are you? It'd be the easiest thing in the world for you to go to the empathy, because that's part of what makes up the listener's style.
Right.
For the conductor, I actually, in some cases, have to make myself go there. It doesn't mean I don't have empathy or it's not accessible to me, but in the moment, because the forward progress got blocked, I'm looking at what you're saying as an excuse as opposed to a real life thing.
Cool. So again, conductors bring a lot of cool things. They get things done. They tend to rise up in organizations because of this. But a negative side, if they're not careful, is they could give the vibe that the relationships are not so important and getting stuff done is. And this can be intimidating if you're a leader.
It reminds me of what you just said, too, about rising up in organizations. It is true that you see more conductors in the higher positions, CEO, etc. And there's lots of reasons for that, including the one you just mentioned, which is, get things done, get results. You've mentioned a couple times, Ethan, that we may have a 6th episode on this series.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking about that because what kind of jobs attract different styles? How does gender play into this? How do cultures play into this? So there might be some fodder for us to spend some time on those other questions.
I think there definitely is. There's some important things here that we're not able to cover in just the context of going over each style. Anyways, the first one was results. The second one is decisiveness.
They are decisive, and they wish you were too.
All right. So this is probably one of the reasons why they may tend to get into leadership roles. Right? They're able to do that kind of decision-making thing that's important to do in a leadership role. What could be the downside if conductors aren't careful with this one of being too decisive?
Yeah, a couple things. One would be deciding and then sticking to that decision, regardless of new information, etc. They're a little bit likely to be somewhat stubborn around the decision they've made.
It's in stone now.
Yeah, well, I already made that decision, so please don't waste my time with having to, I don't want to second guess it.
However, that might be less if you're a conductor promoter. Would you say so?
Yeah.
A promoter, you're willing to change, try new things. So just because you've made a decision doesn't mean you're going to make a different decision on that same issue tomorrow or the next week, right? So that's the way the primary and secondary might interact.
Absolutely. In fact, what you're getting at right now is that we have to do a little side note on this because we are now, for the first time in this series, bringing in secondaries for the most part. Yes, there are such things. There are such people as analyzer promoters. There are people that are primary promoters, secondary analyzers, but that's pretty rare because back to our chart, those are opposites. In fact, only 8% of the population total have opposite behavior styles as their primary, secondary. So that would be listener, conductor, conductor, listeners, analyzer, promoter, promoter, analyzers. So that's pretty rare. But now, listeners, you've heard us talk about analyzers, you've heard us talk about promoters. The fact that we're now introducing conductors, we're probably introducing to many of you now your secondary, right? Or your primary and your secondary we've already covered. The secondaries are really, really significant. As Ethan just said, if I'm a conductor analyzer, and this issue of sort of decisiveness comes up, I'm probably going to be a little bit seen as a little bit more rigid because the conductor part of me doesn't want to change gears and the analyzer part of me wants to, process a lot longer before I make any changes because I like consistency. On the other hand, if I'm a secondary promoter, like you said, it's going to be a little more likely that I'm going to be able to flex. You asked about the downside. Another downside for conductors and decisions is we might not take the time to survey the people in my life, to survey my employees, to find out what they're thinking.
Including other people's opinions.
Exactly.
They're expedient.
Yeah. I want to just
take more time. That would block my progress.
I don't want to waste my time asking your opinion. Let me just decide. It gets things done quicker.
Right. But it gets things done quicker because in the immediate, yes, it may get things done quicker, but what are the residual results of that?
Yeah, in fact, can I use that as a segue into our third thing? I want to talk about efficiency. I really want to talk about efficiency right now because the third thing on the list here is efficiency, and Ethan, you just gave such a good example of that. One of the primary sort of organizing factors around conductors is this need for efficiency, and here's how it works. If I want to go from A to B as a conductor, I want to figure out the quickest way to get from A to B. And if I want to accomplish something, the quickest way to do that is to make a decision, right? It's going to take more time if I ask people's opinion. But what you're getting at, which is so important, I end up saving time in the short run, right? And then I end up costing myself a whole bunch of time later in lots of ways, for lots of reasons.
Morale issues,
Yep.
Right?
People not feeling included, so now they're not bought into my decision.
Right. They're not doing their best work because of the morale that you've created. There's a lot of what conductors may describe as whiny conversations that they now have to have with people because they've hurt their feelings or they weren't included. I mean, it's really just kind of a long-term vision that you have to have with thinking about how you're going to adjust your style.
Yeah, we need to park a little bit on this efficiency thing because it really helps understand conductors. Let me play a little game with you, buddy, buddy. All right, so in the spirit of efficiency, I want you to write me an email, and you're just going to sort of pretend to write me this email. I want you to read it to me, though, right now. I want you to write me an email. Here's the point of your email. Remember, you're a conductor, so I want you to make this email efficient. Mm-hmm. Now, the point of your email is there is this proposal that you've asked me to put together for this client that is looking for a proposal. You would like me to have this proposal ready for you by, what day is this? Is this Saturday? Next Wednesday. You'd like me to have this proposal ready for you by Wednesday. All right, so write me an email to that effect, but please be efficient.
So the most efficient way to write you an email to communicate
Yes.
that you need
this proposal by next Wednesday.
Oh, I need it.
Yeah, you want the proposal done by me. You want me to have it done by 4 o'clock next Wednesday. So write the email.
Need report 4 o'clock Wednesday.
Whoa, that was really good. That was 4 words.
Actually, not even Wednesday, just WED.
WED. Oh, WED.
Yeah.
Report due for.
Not even due. Report dash. Need 4 p.m.
It's like code.
Wind.
It's like code. Okay. You went pretty extreme with that. Oh, and put that in the subject line. Like, don't even put it in the email, right? Yeah. So yeah, I mean, a person who's not quite as extreme as you might say, report due Wednesday at 4 or something, right? But so what they're thinking as they wrote this email, no, I take that back. They're not thinking this. This is really almost unconscious. There's this little bit of a hit, this positive feeling they have inside of them of, wow, that was efficient, right? I just saved 4 seconds. I saved 6 seconds by not having to I didn't write your name. I didn't say thank you. I didn't say please. I didn't put any animated kittens in there. I didn't do anything else except exactly what I needed. And it feels really good for me until, like you said, I have to have a whiny conversation with my employee because I was curt, or I was, way too direct, or I was unkind, or
maybe it wasn't clear.
Maybe it wasn't clear. Exactly.
Right? Yeah. No, I get it.
So this efficiency thing really does good on one hand, right? It really does allow us as conductors to get stuff done and to move forward, but it really does get in the way of relationships. Usually, that's usually where it costs us.
Right. Now, efficiency and action, we usually talk about as one, right? With you just said efficiency, but you can think of it as action as well. They're action-oriented. They're efficient.
Yeah. In fact, let's contrast and compare, right? We talked about promoters. They also had the word action, which means let's go forward. Let's not spend a lot of time. Let's move forward. Promoters had as their secondary word with that, which was immediacy, right? Which kind of gets them in trouble sometimes. For conductors, we have our secondary word there next to action, which is efficiency, which is what we've just described. Now, if you have a primary, secondary style like I do, which is promoter and conductor, you know that we are going to be pretty expedient. We're going to be talking fast and making fast decisions and, et cetera, et cetera. On the other hand, if my secondary, like you, was analyzer, that might pull back a little bit of that efficiency. Mm-hmm. It might temper that.
That makes sense. The next one is to fix things. That system could work better, right? We can fix that. That process could work better. Let's fix that. There's something we can do to improve this. Right, and so in a lot of ways, conductors they're very innovative.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, they're looking for ways. They're specifically seeking ways to make things better. Now, the annoying thing is what they're trying to fix is you.
Right. That could be frustrating. Is the thing they're trying to fix is you, trying to make you a better human being without your consent. Right. Mm-hmm. The good news here is, again, this is one of the reasons that these conductors rise up in organizations, because they're looking for solutions. They're looking for, like you said, they're being innovative, they're being creative, they're thinking outside the box, they're adding to their desire to fix things a fair amount of courage. And let's do something kind of radical, right? Let's do something that hasn't been done before. So it's really cool. I think they bring a fair amount of sort of fresh energy to an organization. The other thing that can be troubling with that, not just when they're trying to fix a person, is when they're trying to fix too much at all at once, very efficiently, very quickly, it's not even broken. Let's fix it. Right. Mm-hmm. It can lead to burnout. It can lead to change burnout.
Yeah. The next one is to be challenged, right? They like a high bar when it comes to challenges,
actually,
which is pretty positive. We need people in the workplace that are willing to take on those big monster challenges.
Yeah. In fact, one study showed that conductors tend to get into jobs that are a little bit above their skill level, And they love it because they get in there and they get to stretch. And then they do it. They stretch, they make it. Now they're getting bored and they're going to stretch again. So yeah, they love to stay challenged. Even in sort of personal lives, you find that there's more conductors involved in sort of risky activities. Rock climbing and like you, my young son. But they in professions, they tend to be a little bit more likely to be drawn toward dangerous professions, challenging, not physically dangerous like being a police officer, maybe just emotionally challenging like being a CEO.
Right. I never had thought about the personal life aspect to that. I would just go as far as to say they just tend to do more challenging hobbies and activities,
yes.
right?
Yes. Yep.
And that could be physical for some people, and there's a lot of other hobbies that are quite challenging that a conductor might pick up that are not necessarily physical. Right. Oh, there's a dog that just entered the room.
Hi, Micah.
Hey, Micah.
So we're actually recording today in my office at home. Ethan actually has been home for the week, hanging out over the holidays, and Micah just wandered in here.
Let me go close this door so the dog doesn't disturb us.
All right. So while Ethan's taking care of the dog, so challenges, they love to fix things. If you really want to motivate a conductor, say something like, yeah, I don't think you're going to be able to fix that. And they're like, oh, yeah, let me show you. Watch me. There's a bit of competitiveness here. And I don't want to go so far as to say, again, that, this is the one competitive behavior style and the rest of them aren't. But there really is a tendency for listeners to be less competitive and conductors to be more competitive.
Sorry about that, folks. Taking care of the dog situation. Where are we at?
Let's move on. What we've covered so far is results and decisiveness and efficiency and to fix things and to be challenged. I want to add, and this is actually pretty key, control.
Control freak.
No. Before you...
I know. I like to put the devil's advocate here.
Well, it can be that way. You're not wrong. It can show up as control freak, but I also want our listeners to think about air traffic controllers, right? These are the people that see the big picture, and in fact, big picture is the next thing on the list. So let's do these together, right? Control and big picture are number 6 and 7. Conductors, they see the big picture. They're really good at looking at the world that way. And so, because of their efficiency, hey, you know what? If we need this to get accomplished, I'm looking at the big picture. I need you to go do this and you to go do that. And don't waste my time by asking questions, right? Just go do what I'm asking you to do. And everything's going to take care of itself. And all these cool things will be fixed.
Right.
Efficiently.
You just got to trust me.
Just trust me, right?
Right.
So it can look like control freak. It can look like, you're taking over. And honestly, and this is something we might talk about in our 6th episode of this series, we'll talk about stress and how each behavior style responds to stress. When conductors get stressed out, one of the reasons they're getting stressed is because of a lack of, things feel out of control, right? Things don't feel in control. So what are you going to do? If you're a conductor, you're going to take control.
Take more control.
Right. And everyone else is thinking, back off, things are fine, you're being a control freak. But the conductor is starting to feel better now because they're taking some control. So think of air traffic controller, think of, this is where they got their name, the conductor, basically, right? Think of the conductor of the orchestra.
Right. I see conductors of having a really good aerial view of things going on, right?
Big picture.
They're seeing the big picture and they're seeing multiple steps out. But again, they just have to be careful. They can't forget that people don't like to be treated like pieces on a chessboard.
Yes,
right?
Exactly right.
And people need to understand the why behind decisions being made and why one piece is being moved here and not here.
Yep.
Not just trust me.
And the reason conductors don't think to give that information is not because they don't care or because they're not empathetic, because it takes time, right? It doesn't feel efficient, right?
At least in the immediate.
Yes.
Now, okay, so that was control and big picture. The next organizing principle for conductors are change and new ideas. And if you are following the plot line with this behavioral style series, You probably heard that one come up with another one of our styles.
Yep.
Which was with our promoters.
Yeah, there's said variety and new ideas.
This is change and new ideas, which is very similar with some small nuance differences, which is, conductors are let's try something else. Let's not get bogged down in routine. Let's fix it in a creative and innovative way.
Yeah, the promoters are the let's not get bogged down in routine. That's the variety thing. And conductors are the, you know what, there's a better way. Let's change it. Let's improve it. And as you can imagine, it's just so important in the workplace to have people that are willing to do this, right? To let's try something else. And then, again, like we talked about with promoters, if it's overdone, we can wear everybody out. Change, what's the word for that? Change fatigue. I couldn't think of the word. It's change fatigue. Yeah, that's what promoters and conductors can produce. And as a primary secondary combination, which is what I have going on, it can. That's exactly what I can end up doing to folks. Is let's do something else. Let's change it. Let's fix it. And people are not there yet.
Now, this one's an interesting one for me because, again, one of the organizing principles for conductors that we've mentioned is decisiveness. Right now, with this one, they also like new ideas and change in a way. Right. So how can you both be decisive but also like change? Help me kind of parse those two out.
Well, okay. I mean, once I've decided,
right,
let's stick to that decision. Like don't make me go back and revisit it because that's not efficient. But I'm going to make a lot of new decisions. I mean, a lot of decisions about lots of things. I'm not necessarily going to change course once I got
change the same thing over.
No, I'm going to stick with my decision. But I have lots of things to fix around here. There's lots of people that need to be fixed and lots of systems that need to be fixed. And so there's just going to be quite a few things that I'm going to want to fix and change and et cetera, et cetera.
Makes sense.
These other last two, we're going to talk about them together because they're both around communication styles. Number 9 is conciseness, which I actually realize is a word that we just made up.
Conciseness?
I don't think conciseness is actually a word.
Yeah, conciseness is a word.
Are you sure? Are you going to look it up while we're talking? Please do. I think it's a made-up word. Concise is kind of what we're getting at here, but I think we just made it into a word called conciseness. While he's looking that up, the 10th one is straight talk. So we're going to talk about these two things together. Conductors want conciseness, and conductors want straight talk. What do you find in there, buddy?
It may not be a real word.
I didn't think so. I think I looked this up once before, and it was a word that I just made up.
Well, here's it.
Yeah.
Conciseness, the quality of being concise.
Okay, all right. Do you realize we're wasting time right now?
No, it's important.
No, it wasn't that important. It was my fault. All right, conciseness and straight talk. Ethan, what do you want from me if you want me to be concise?
I want you to just tell me what I need to know and not all the extra fluff and things around the edges, right? Just tell me exactly what I need to know.
Yep. Don't waste time. Don't give me a big long story first.
Right. We don't need to do small talk beforehand.
Come into my office.
Right.
Tell me what you need and then go away.
Right. Exactly.
I want this conciseness. I don't want a long email. I won't read it.
Right.
I don't want to hear your processing. I don't want to hear all the reasons that you're thinking of, all the things you're thinking. I just get to the punchline.
And I want you to talk about one subject, not bounce around to all these other subjects at the same time.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep. And again, I think you alluded to this earlier. We're making conductors maybe sound a little jerky. We're being a little hyperbolic here, but it is this tendency for us conductors to just say what you came here to say.
Right.
So there's conciseness. What do you want from me, Ethan, if you want straight talk?
When I hear straight talk, this to me is more around honesty.
Yes.
But honesty, I guess, in the lowercase h, if that's a thing, right?
It's not about not lying. It's about
if you're feeling a certain way, tell me how it is, right? If you don't like a decision I made, tell me, right? Don't beat around the bush, right? Nothing like that.
Don't fluff it up. Don't sugarcoat. If you're mad at me, just tell me you're mad at me. Now, this is ironic, right? Because, okay, on the one hand, yes, they want this, and they actually tend to do this. In fact, both these two things we just said, there's your conductor. They're going to get to the point quickly. That's concise.
Right. And I will say, as a conductor myself, this has gotten me in a fair amount of trouble throughout my life.
Yeah, that's the downside.
With my straight talk. Right?
Yeah, straight talk. Well, it's ironic for a couple of reasons, right? Conductors do talk directly. They use straight talk. They just say what's true for them, And they go through life without, if they're not careful, they can go through life saying things like, "Oh, all I said was right. I didn't mean to hurt her feelings.
That's probably a well-repeated phrase among conductors.
Yes,
all I said was.
Conductors, they talk in terms of directness, and they use straight talk. The irony here is that they want straight talk, right? They want you also to talk that way to them. But of the 4 styles, they're the hardest people to give straight talk to.
Yeah.
Why might that
imagine that? Well, because they can be more combative people.
They push back.
So if I say as a conductor, just tell me what you think of this. Tell me how you feel about this. And they tell you, and then they're going to be the ones that push back and say, well, why? Why would you feel that way? Right. Let me try to convince you otherwise.
Yeah. So let's role play this. Give me a passive aggressive answer here. Hey Ethan, what do you think about going to the Chinese place tonight for dinner?
We could go there, I guess.
Ethan, just tell me what you want. Do you want to go there or do you not want to go there?
I did look up the reviews the other day, but no.
Oh, you don't want to go there? Well, why not? But why not? It's awesome. They have chow mein.
All right, so wow, okay, I'm sold.
Okay, what just happened there is actually pretty typical. Like I want you to just. Conductors have a low tolerance for what feels like passive-aggressive responses, right? Like, so if you just tell me what you want, tell me what you think. But then when you do, I'm going to go into debate mode maybe, because conductors kind of like that. Let's go head-to-head.
Right.
But there's only 20% of the population are conductors. So, if I happen to be with a conductor, we can do that. We can go head-to-head. We can fight it out. We can debate.
Wait, stop right there. Only 20% of the population are conductors.
Right.
I think it's an important thing to point out, which is less
than all the others.
Yeah,
there's fewer conductors than there are other styles. Okay. And so conductors, because of that, can actually feel a little disenfranchised and misunderstood in the world. You get 2 conductors going head to head, debating, arguing. There's no hard feelings. There's no hurt feelings. They're going to go off and have a great time playing golf together, right? It's fantastic that they had that conversation. But when the conductor approaches another behavior style with that approach, right? Like, well, tell me why you think that. No, let me prove you wrong.
That's intimidating.
It's intimidating, and the other person may back down, and it can lead to some real. In fact, unfortunately, in relationship, listeners and conductors can have this dynamic where years into the relationship, the listener says, "You know what? I'm done. I haven't had a voice for 20 years." And the conductor is like, "What? What are you talking about? I thought you always wanted to go to the restaurant I wanted to go to."
Yeah, it's just the different way people are viewing the world, and we have to be aware of this.
Can I tell a quick story about that? So Christy and I were in San Francisco on vacation. I'm a primary promoter, secondary conductor. She is a primary analyzer, secondary listener. So we're in San Francisco, and we're driving around, and we had been thinking about how we wanted to paint our house back home. And we came across this home that I thought was so cool. It was bright orange. The gables were red, and the trim was yellow. And I thought it was the coolest looking thing. And I say, "Hey, Christy, let's paint our house that way." And she says, "I don't know." Now, when a conductor hears, "I don't know," guess what he hears?
Yes, let's do it. Or we're just about all the way there.
That's exactly right. Conductor, when he hears "I don't know," he hears, I almost got it, right? I just need to push harder. Now, when a listener says, "I don't know," guess what she means? Hell no. Hell no. No way.
Right.
And so we're at the paint store a month later looking at colors, and I'm over there looking at the reds and the yellows, and she says, "What are you doing? We are not going to paint our house that color." And I said, "Honey, we talked about this." Right? So it's that sort of kind of pushing, straight talk, decisiveness, control that can be a relationship issue if you're not careful.
Yeah. So I think that's all 10. Are we missing any? Straight no. I think that wraps it up for the top 10 wants, needs, and expectations of conductors. Let's go over them real quick. I'll just rattle them off. Conductors are motivated by results. They also are motivated by decisiveness and they like to fix things. They like to be challenged. They lean towards action and efficiency. Control. They like to have some control, and they're very good at that. And they also see the big picture. And they like change and new ideas. Conciseness, which we've determined is a word. And straight talk. And I'm forgetting one.
No, that was it.
I
That
think
was 10.
that is it.
That was 10.
Those are the 10.
So now let's talk about, we've done those with each of the other four, we've done 2 styles so far, right? We've done analyzer and promoter. We're on conductor. Let's talk about the way conductors show up emotionally. And we've described a spectrum in our recent episodes. The left side of the spectrum was less expressive in terms of physically showing emotions and also verbally talking about emotions. The right side of the spectrum was much more likely to show what they're feeling and talk about what they're feeling. And we've placed our 2 previous styles on the spectrum by putting the analyzers on the far left, less likely to talk and show the emotions, and promoters on the far right, more likely to express and show their emotions. We're going to put conductors right next to the analyzers. Okay? They're going to still be on the less expressive side, but they're now toward the middle. So we're going to find that our conductors and our listeners are right next to the middle. They're a little bit more balanced in this area. They're a little bit more nuanced when it comes to emotions.
So balanced in nuance in the way they express emotions, the way they portray them physically.
And verbally, right.
Verbally.
Yeah. Not how they're feeling. That's a different thing. We're not talking about how people are feeling. It's really how it's showing up, right?
No.
So conductors, they're going to be a little more likely than analyzers to talk about their feelings and to show those. But it's still going to be relatively muted. If you compared conductors' expression of emotions to, say, listeners or especially promoters, you're going to find that your conductors are a lot more muted. You're going to see less facial expressions in general than you would for the other 2 styles, for listeners and promoters. But here's where it gets a little bit tricky for conductors. It actually reminds me of something, Ethan, you said last episode. We were talking about promoters, and you mentioned yourself, and you said something about how sometimes you get read, right? You might have a feeling, you might have a frustration,
right,
and it shows up, and you didn't mean for it to show up.
Yep, I show my emotions on my sleeve, as they say.
Yes, I'm going to challenge you on that.
Yes, you're going to challenge me to do less of that?
No, I'm going to challenge you on the way you're perceiving yourself. All right, can we do that here? Is that safe?
This is safe. This is a safety zone.
And it's a safety zone.
This is just you and me, bud.
This is a safe space. So I don't see you as somebody who wears your feelings on your sleeve. That would fit with the fact that you're an analyzer primarily and a conductor secondary. Both of those are on the less expressive side. What does happen is, and this is true for conductors, the one emotion that does show up, and you might not be aware of it when it's happening, is going to be frustration. Anger. Anything that's sort of in that I'm not happy with someone else, or I'm not happy with what's happening in this circumstance right now. That's the emotion that I think you will then show on your face.
It's the negative emotions
it's the
towards something or someone else,
right? Usually
show up,
right? Usually frustration or anger. It would be those 2 things. That's what I think happens with you. I don't think with you when you're feeling the other stuff, excited, happy, even hurt feelings. I don't see those things showing up for you.
A little more stoic in that sense.
More stoic,
right?
More muted.
I think that rings true because I even look back to the very, very start of my career right out of college and working in a corporate office situation. I had to go through, I guess I now look at it as I got to go through a lot of tough conversations with my boss and my director, and then a little bit further down the road, my direct reports of the way I was showing up physically. And it was, to me, it was like I did not know I was showing up that way. Like I did not know that they could tell that I was angry or stressed at them or annoyed with them, right? But that just showed up. And so I think I expanded that to people can always see what I'm feeling, which now I'm realizing that's probably not the case. It is more of these negative feelings and emotions,
Right.
Especially anger.
Yeah.
Especially anger just shows up, not in a way that it's yelling and shouting,
not at all.
No. But it just
on your face,
just on the face.
Yeah, that and
or
and
the
so
tone of voice.
Here's the thing that happens with conductors throughout their lives, and this gets amped up if you have a secondary analyzer or you have an analyzer conductor combination. This actually gets amped up,
such as myself,
which is you. Analyzer conductors and conductor analyzers get accused of being mad even when they're not.
Mm-hmm. That definitely rings true to me.
Okay, we'll start with that. They get accused of being mad when they're not. It could be stress.
Right.
That's all it is.
Right.
I'm feeling some tension. I'm feeling some stress. It can be some frustration. It could be anything that's on the not pleasant side. It could even be hurt feelings. But that's not what shows up. What shows up is he's mad or he's annoyed. And that can be a relationship issue, right? If I'm in a relationship with someone who seems mad at me, most people have a problem with other people's anger, right? Now, the other thing that makes this even sort of a double whammy is conductors do tend to get to anger a little bit quicker than the other three styles.
So why do you think that is?
Anger is what's considered, there's actually one exception to this rule. There's one kind of anger that doesn't fit this pattern, but anger is a secondary emotion. It's not a primary emotion except for one kind of anger, which means that you are feeling actually another emotion first, but you skip over it and you don't notice it and you go right to the secondary. So that thing you just said hurt my feelings, that's primary. But now I go to anger quickly. Conductors do that a little bit more quickly than others, right? I'm frustrated because this isn't working. This thing isn't working. I might skip over that primary emotion and go right to anger, which is secondary. So what conductors have to watch for is they will have a tendency to skip that primary emotion and go to anger, but they also will look like they're accessing anger when they're not even doing that. I had one friend one time who came home one time and she says, I was at the store. This friend walks up to me and she says, "Are you mad?" And she says, "I was just choosing soup." Did she think I was mad at the soup? I was just concentrating and I looked mad. Right? Now, why is that? Well, we talk about non-demonstrative on their face, right? Their face doesn't change as much. They furrow their brows sometimes when they concentrate. They talk directly. They get right to the point. You kind of put a bunch of things together. It can look like anger if they're not careful.
Right. Now to be clear, we're now kind of talking about two different things of why anger or being upset might show up. One is literally, you're feeling stress or annoyance, and as a conductor, it might be easier for you to go to anger with that.
Right.
And then the other thing that you were just mentioning is just the way you show up, whether upset or not, you just have this demeanor that may look a little bit more intense, a little bit more upset, even when you're not. So
and
now
it's interpreted that way.
So now if you combine those two things, then you can see how there might be some relationship issues. Yep. But again, I really think the key here is just awareness.
Yes.
Right? It wasn't until I was aware this was happening and aware how this was affecting my direct reports, especially them, then was I able to start changing. Now, quick question for you. Do for those that are maybe like myself and are conductors or just want to kind of work on, maybe the angry parts of their life, do you have any particular resources or books out there? I have one to mention that's really helped me. Again, I've always been a little bit of an angry, not overall I'm an angry person, but it's easier for me to go to anger, just like we were talking about.
Right.
What happens with conductors often. A book that really helped me was Awareness. It's just called Awareness by Anthony DeMello.
I've not heard of that.
It's a short read. You can sit down and read it in, a few hours. And it's not specifically about anger, but it's just about being aware of what you're experiencing in the moment and how you interpret what you're experiencing may not be reality. Now, awareness, and now it sounds like a very hyperbolic title. It's like, okay, awareness. But trust me, pick it up. I would say that after reading it, there is a long-lasting effect that lasts for, a few months of the way I'm just kind of being more aware of my emotions. So that's one resource I had in mind.
That reminds me, and it's an excellent idea to read on that. On our 6th episode where we talk about a lot of the other sort of dimensions of behavior styles, I'd like to talk again about mindfulness. You're talking right there about becoming more aware of what you're feeling. which is a direct result of the practice of mindfulness, which I think for every behavior style, practicing mindfulness will help us be aware of what's actually going on inside of us and gives us a better ability to read others. So I think that's going to be key.
Yeah, I think we'll talk more about that, and I'm sure, and we'll also have separate episodes about mindfulness and mindfulness in the workplace, which we've both been on our own quote unquote journeys with that. Yeah. So anything else that you want to say here about conductors and the way they show up?
No, I think we got it. I think the key now is let's maybe move into some growth opportunities for you guys.
So again, at the end of each of these episodes that we're doing on the different behavioral styles, we're talking about 3 different growth opportunities. And these are the 3 opportunities that we often see this behavioral style choose to work on, or when we're coaching this behavioral style, these are the most likely that we'll work with them on improving. And I said this last episode and probably the one before that, but we are not at all asking you to change your behavior style, right? We're talking about making a 10 to 20% adjustment to the way you're showing up. And that 10 to 20% adjustment may fall under one of these 3 categories. So what would be the first thing that you would have a conductor work on? This is their growth opportunities, folks.
I think the first thing I'm going to suggest for conductors is to really work on true listening skills. And we actually have an episode on this. I don't remember which episode it was. It was way back near the beginning when we were talking about adaptive skills. But I would say one of the most important things that a conductor can do to balance out their style and to be more effective is to practice active listening, which is the kind of listening where you didn't, not just that you heard what the other person said, but more importantly, the other person felt heard, right? So that's things like not talking as much, asking questions, paraphrasing what you heard, some empathetic reflection, really creating a space where the other person feels super respected because they're feeling heard.
Right. And for a conductor, that may mean, biting your tongue a little bit if they tend to be adding more information than you feel is necessary.
Get to the point. Point.
Right. That may be what you're thinking in your mind. Hold back that initial first reaction and just let them express themselves. Listen, ask follow-up questions.
And don't immediately fix, right? That would be a tendency for a conductor, which is opposite of good listening, which is, here's the solution.
Right.
Here's what you should do.
Let's get right to it. We can fix this. Right. Yeah. So really listening, active listening.
Ethan, what's another one?
Now, the other one for conductors, and this is certainly one that I've spent a lot of time working on, is take time to connect, right? People before tasks is how I like to look at this. I think you mentioned the 10-second rule or 5-second rule earlier in this episode, right? Or maybe it was last episode. It really doesn't matter. It often takes literally 10 extra seconds to connect and add that relational piece to your relationships and your connections and your interactions, right?
Even an email.
That's what I'm talking about. Just it could just be a few more words. Hey, hope you're well today. I need that report by 4 p.m. Wednesday. Please and thank you. Let me know if you have any questions.
Yeah, I love that you said that, because I've talked to conductors in the workplace who literally consciously resist what you just said.
Right.
Because they say it's fluff, it's phony, it doesn't mean anything. What they're missing is really even the brain research on how people respond to being treated respectfully and to be treated with positive relationship.
Right. And talked about this last episode. It's also creating safety in your workplace. And I know that sounds to some people like just, again, fluff and snowflakey stuff. No, you look at the research, and groups that report feeling safe with their members are the most effective groups and cultures. Yep. So that relationship piece is just letting that person know repeatedly that there's a connection here, and I value you as a person in our relationship, and we're here to get stuff done together.
Yeah, and what's a good message to conductors is you don't have to walk around, nor should you walk around every day saying things like, I really value you, you're really important to me, I really care about what you have to say. No, you don't have to say any of that. You just have to demonstrate it by literally hey, how you doing today? Or, hey, thanks so much for that. Or, hey, could you please think about, right? It's those extra words and those extra little connections that makes such a difference. And so this one here that you just mentioned, Ethan, take time to connect, that's going to go a long ways towards success for our conductors.
Now, what's the third and final one that you would have conductors work on?
It would be when you're making a decision, ask other people's opinions. Another word for that, another phrase for that is to share control. Give people a chance to sound in on the problem, on the solution, on your decisions. Basically, incorporate other people's opinions.
That's great. I don't have anything else to say about that besides I'm working on it.
Yeah, me too. And here's the thing. I want to, just something that one of my clients noticed several years ago. Let me repeat those three things, right? Those three growth opportunities. Really listening, right? Active listening skills. Number 2, take time to connect, which is putting people before the task. And number 3, share control, incorporate others' opinions. When you put those three things together, there's actually, and I'll ask you this, Ethan, those all have something in common. What do all those three things have in common?
Well, they all involve the other person.
Right. And here's what we're noticing. Because all those things have to do with the other person, conductors can be seen as not caring about people. And I want to dispel that myth right now, because you're right. All those three things, listening, incorporating others' opinions, taking time to connect, they do have in common the other person. Because conductors struggle with those, it can look like they don't care about the other person, but that's not true. Because the other thing that those three things have in common is none of those things are efficient. Every one of those things takes more time, right? Listening takes longer. Sharing or incorporating people's opinions takes longer. Putting people before task takes longer.
I keep repeating this, though, in the immediate.
Yes.
I really believe that if you're looking at the long-term gain,
yes.
Adding these pieces are actually going to save you more time in the long run in so many different ways.
Unfortunately, though, and I know the way our brains work, we're in the immediate. We're in the moment. Immediate gratification. Right? In the moment, it's frustrating to do something, if you're a conductor, that takes longer. So you end up not doing that thing. And then, like as you said, it costs me now later.
But the key here is awareness of this stuff, so we can begin to work against human biology and psychology
and evolution.
Yes. I mean,
Yes,
it's totally possible. We've seen it in our clients and ourselves. So take these 3 growth opportunities. And maybe they work for you as a conductor, and maybe you'll have some other ones you want to work on. Just work on one of them per day or per week. I personally like per week. So this week, I am going to put a sticky note on my computer that says, take time to connect. So when I'm writing that email that says, need report wed, I'm going to stop. I'm going to take 10 extra seconds, and that relationship piece will be there. The following week, maybe I'll work on really listening, active listening, right? Narrowly focus on one thing at a time, and you will see improvement. Not tomorrow, not in a week, not in a month even, but throughout time, it will work.
That's so good. I got to tell you, I had this client who was literally working on this, and his was people before task. So he decided he was going to make his emails a little bit more relational. So he created one of those automatic signatures that literally said, I think it said, thanks so much. Hope you're having a good day. Sincerely, David. Which was cool the first time I got the email, because I thought, oh, that was nice.
Right.
But then every single email he sent me had that signature, which was very efficient.
Right.
So he kind of shot himself in the foot there,
That's hilarious. But the idea, the attempt was there.
He was trying.
I think that's all. That's all we have today for this fourth installment of our behavioral style series. And we will pick it up in a few weeks with listeners.
Yes, we'll talk to listeners. And closing today, I would like to just encourage you all to be thinking about how cool it could be for you and your workplace to have us come in and do some work with you guys on lots of things we could do, right? We have management, we have leading, Managing with Mind and Heart, the 5-day series. We've got lots of different seminars. We got lots of things we do, but we do this behavior styles thing, which is really fun. And I just got to tell you, coming into a work group or a executive team and walking through behavior styles for a day. And we do a lot of really cool activities where you discover your primary and your secondary. And we talk a lot about how they interact and we chart it on the board. And you just come away with, I really believe, and I've seen this happen over and over again, with just a greater sense of trust and respect between the various people in that organization or in that work group. So Ethan, how would they get a hold of us if they wanted to do something like that?
Yeah, and I'll just add to that before I give you the contact information, that there's so much more that we're able to do with an actual work group talking about behavioral styles than we're able to do over, a podcast. So go to our website. This is the best way to get in contact with us. That's just nashconsulting.com, or shoot us over an email at contact@nashconsulting.com.
But make it a nice email, like, hey, how you guys doing?
Yeah, none of that expedient stuff.
Right.
Yeah, all right. Beautiful. Folks, that's all we have for you today. Until next time, goodbye.